It's time for school days. Help for moms and dads of school-aged kids.
I tell parents, you're like a training wheel on a bike. Your job isn't to make the bike move. Your job is to keep the bike upright.
Those of us who are the true educators, we really want to be given the opportunity to educate the whole child.
Sometimes we make decisions with our kids on how we think our kids are going to feel in the first 10 minutes versus thinking about 10 months or 10 years.
Oftentimes, as parents, I think we want to protect our kids, but I think one of the greatest gifts we can give them is allow them to experience adversity.
Yeah.
Here are your hosts, David and Danita Bailey.
Good evening. Welcome to School Days, Help for Moms and Dads of School-Age Kids. I'm Danita Bailey.
And I'm David Bailey. However, I'm not the host today. That's why I was being quiet.
You're still David Bailey, though.
Yes. Well, they know that.
Tests. We have all taken them. Most of us dread them. But did you know that with some tests, knowing the content isn't the only thing that can help you? On certain tests, strategies can be the most important or just as important as being able to remember what the teacher taught you. So today, we will hear from our own David Bailey, who is a veteran teacher of 12 years and who has been tutoring students for over 20 years. So, David, why did you think that doing this episode was important? And just kind of tell us a little bit about your background in teaching and tutoring.
Okay, so let me go back to circa 1991. There we go. Our junior year, I was on a journey and a quest to get into the U.S. Air Force Academy. I wanted to be a pilot at the time. Well, I still love flying, but I'll tell you about why I didn't fly later on. But I had to get a certain SAT score to get into the academy. So I took the test, and I got the score I needed on my on my math score. But my reading score was just a little bit off. So they take the top scores from all your tests. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to take it again. So I took the SAT for the second time and got a little bit closer to it. I think I was maybe 30 or 40 points off, which is maybe 3 or 4 questions. And I said, oh boy. Okay, so that didn't do it. So I took it again a third time. And I think on that one I got within one question of what I needed on my reading score. Now, mind you, I bought the College Board SAT book, and I was going through all the questions they had and the reading and all those other things. And to make a long story short, I took the SAT 5 times, y'all. 5 times in high school, and I got within 10 points of the SATs.
What's the average number of times people take the SAT?
2.
Okay.
And maybe if they really want to push it, maybe 3. But because they had that hard cutoff on the score, and my math score was fine, but it was the verbal score, and it was killing me. And so eventually, I had everything I needed to get into the Air Force Academy, but my SAT score literally had the grades, had the physical fitness test. You have to, but then they said, well, you can't go in directly, but you can go to our one-year preparatory school in Colorado Springs. And so I got there and took the SAT. Gosh, probably took it 3 more times.
Wait, you're telling me you took it 8 times?
Pretty much, yeah. Plus the ACT. And ironically, I got accepted into the academy on my ACT score, so I never got that SAT score that I needed after 8 times. So let's fast forward now and started working with kids in school. And then eventually I was working with some people, and I started noggin coaching, and I had my first SAT client. And by then, I started to study up some more on test-taking strategies and how to help kids. And I was working with a kid. He was a very bright young man, and he didn't. His scores were nowhere near reflective of his potential. So we just focused mainly on strategy. And so after the first time he took the test, after coaching him, his score went up 300 points.
Ooh.
300 points. And I was like, whoa. I was like, wait, there's something on to here. I'm like, let me see what's going on here. And I looked through everything that we were going through and seeing how it worked. And I was like, oh my gosh, Um, Nobody taught me any of these things when I was coming up through high school. I was kind of just left to my own things, and a lot of things I did learn, I had to unlearn once I started coaching students. And so over the years, I've coached, gosh, probably hundreds of kids by now. And
Not to mention you've been teaching for 12 years. What grades have you taught?
Okay, so I've taught fourth grade, contained classroom. I've taught eighth grade math. I've taught sixth grade math, and now I'm teaching high school math at the middle school level. And so that's algebra 1 and geometry at the middle school level. And so I've worked with a broad range of kids, and we've had a lot of success with not because of, of course it's because of the kids, of course, but just coaching them up and getting them ready to take tests in a way that they hadn't before. And I've worked with kids who have gone through their SAT programs and ACT programs at their schools, and the strategies that I'm going to talk about today that their teachers never ever taught them. They're like, I never knew that. No one ever told me these things. And so
and that's not something that teachers really have time to do, right? Is teach test taking strategies in depth.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 because it's the content. We have to make sure they know the content, which is great, but everyone's not a great test taker. I was never a fast test taker. When I was in college, I went to eventually when I went through the University of Pittsburgh. I've been in a class with pretty big school with maybe 500 people in the class. We take a test. I was one of the last 15 to finish the test. I've never been fast, but it's not necessarily about fast. It's about being a smart test taker. And we've seen just a lot of results over the years where you can raise your scores without even necessarily learning more material. Sometimes it's not about just studying harder. It's about test taking smarter. And so we're going to talk about some of those things today.
Right, and we're not just going to talk about standardized testing. We're going to talk about tests for children and students that are in all grades. Any tests that you may have to take, there's strategies for tackling all of those.
Yeah, a lot of the strategies are used within the standardized test, but they're just things that just on how to be a good test taker. Because sometimes the anxiety can really get in the way. But there are things that there are strategies that can be used that can really help to benefit students no matter where you are, whether you're taking state testing coming up soon or your standardized test, SAT, ACT, or just classroom tests. We're going to help you to get ready today in a way that I wish someone would have told me when I was coming up through.
And me too. All right. Well, before we go any further, let me just say it does take a village. If you hear a great parenting tip or nugget of advice, share it with your parent friends. Facebook it, Instagram it, tweet it, link it in, and add the hashtag School Days Show and hashtag I Am School Days. And also, we do want you to be a part of the show. So if you have any questions or comments, give us a call at 444. Maybe you want the area code for that too. 214-444-5575. Or if you're live with us on Facebook, as I see a couple people are there, drop us a question there, and we'll do our very best to get to you as soon as we can. All right, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with David.
I'm loaded.
You've never been our guest before. You've only just been my co-host. So thank God you are a wealth of information as well. So the first thing I really want to know is, what is the purpose of testing? Why do we have to, as educators, test our students?
Because the government says we have to. No. I mean, not joking. There's so many different camps on why we have to do testing. One is to see what is a tangible way to measure what has been taught in the classroom. So if you're going to look at it from a micro level in the classroom, you take tests to see, okay, we've taught A, B, and C, and we want to measure how well you know A, B, and C. Okay, so there's the classroom level. And then districts typically have the district level test to say, okay, now by this point in the year, you should know A, B, and C collectively, and we want to see how well are you doing as a campus with what you should have been taught by this point in the year. So then that gives them data so they can compare how are each campuses, how are they performing compared to another, what are the gaps, and how can we bring them up to level, and to see what's working, what are best practices as well. And then you have your state level testing, which is what the state says that needs to be done. So they say you have to know all these specific standards, these basic standards that must be learned by the end of the year, and we're going to test you on it so that you can see where you are compared to other students in the state, and to see where the gaps are and how to improve and grow. And then there's national. There are national tests as well where they measure how are you competing against other students across the country. Then on the biggest level is global, and so there are global tests as well where you can compare how one country is doing versus another as well. Now that's an educator answer, but really testing is to see how well you know just the raw facts, but also not just knowing the basic facts, but also how can you apply what's been taught. Now, there are different ways to assess people. There's a typical pencil paper test and the state test. All the thing when you think of a test, what you typically think of, there are as well. But there's also different ways of assessing, and sometimes there's been a debate about how do we assess kids, and is testing biased or not? Do certain tests bend towards a particular type of learner or a particular type of demographic? But there's different ways of testing as well, and so I think the debate has been going on, and now particularly in the pandemic, there's even questions on with the disparities that are happening with people that are like in class students versus at home students. State of Texas is saying right now that only in-person students, their scores will count towards the scores versus at-home students, and so there's a whole lot there, and there's data showing that students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are really struggling at home right now, and so there's a lot going on there. But ultimately, testing as a whole is to see what do you know and how can you apply what you've been taught. No matter how it looks, that's the ultimate goal of a test.
So are there different test taking strategies by subject? Are you going to take a test differently with math than you would with an ELA course?
Yes and no. So depending upon, there are general strategies that are applicable to any type of test, and then there's some that are specific to what type of test you're taking as well. And so if you're doing an ELA test, there's going to be different strategies that will be applicable there as compared to a mathematics test. And then even within out there, and there's data showing that students from economic. Oh, we're good. Mm-hmm. Okay, so even within the test, though, there are general strategies that can be applicable to both. That are like, for example, like how to read a question. That's very specific, but you have to be careful on how you read and what the question is asking, which is general to all different types of tests. But then within math, there's certain things you have to do within math that are going to be different than what you do within like a reading or social studies test.
Right.
Or a science test.
So are there rules that you recommend for all tests across the board? There's certain things that if I'm taking a test, I know I need to do ABC. Yes.
Oh, gosh. I've been waiting for this question. All right, here we go, y'all. So I want everyone
get out your pens and paper.
Yes. So everyone to close your eyes for a second and visualize a 3-tiered wedding cake. Okay. You have the bottom layer, which is the biggest layer. You have the intermediate layer, and you have the top layer. Okay. So on the bottom layer consider those to be the questions that when your child comes across them, they look at the question and they say to themselves, I know what the question is asking, and I know how to answer it, and I can get to the answer quickly. Okay, those are what we call the now questions. Okay, those are questions that can be done within. They size it up quickly. Got it. Boom. Go. I know I got this answer right. Let's go for it. The intermediate layer of the cake would be the questions that look at it and say, I know how to get there, or I mostly know how to get there, but I'm going to need a little more time to either look up and dig into the solution to it, or how to solve it, or where to reference it, or how to justify my answer. And so those questions take a little bit more time to do. It's not that they can't be done, but they're going to take more time to process. They're going to be more time-consuming questions. So those are questions that I call the later questions. And then the last questions, and I think we can all say we've had those in our lives. These are what you look at those questions, and I call them the questions. Like, I don't even know what this question is even asking. I don't know what they're talking about, and I can stare at it all day, and I will never, ever, ever know how to answer those questions. Those are what we call the never questions. So you have now questions, later questions, never questions. Now, the way we typically, just the way our minds are wired and how we approach life is we approach it in a linear fashion, if you think about it. Okay, think of it in a straight line, that everything is sequential. You go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, and this is typically how we take a test, right? I'm going to turn that on its head for a second, and I'm going to say to eliminate that approach and think of the 3-tiered cake and how we attack a question. So, for example, tip number 1 is this, is you only attack first the now questions. Only. So the way you determine that is what I call the 30-second rule. Okay, and what that means is this, is your child takes a look at the question and they read it, process it. No more than 30 seconds. If after 30 seconds they can say, I got this, then dig in. If they can't, if they're still hemming and hawing on the question, or they're not quite sure what to do with it, pause in that question, mark it with an asterisk or circle or something, a box, something to indicate I got to come back to this question.
Right, because otherwise, when you get towards the end and you're out of time, you might forget.
Right, so because you don't want to forget those, so you make some indicator there, and come back to it. Okay, so 30 seconds max. Why? Because on any test, you're always fighting against the clock. Okay, for example, on the ACT exam in the mathematics section, they give you 60 questions in 60 minutes. Okay, that's an average of 1 problem per minute. But we all know that every question is not equal. Some questions are going to take less than a minute. Some will take several minutes more than a minute. And if you're not managing your time well because you're too busy trying just to figure out how to attack the question, then time's going to be wasted. Okay, so you only go through the now questions first, no matter where they are on the test. So that means you might do question 1, question 2, question 3. You might skip 4 and 5, do 6, skip 7, do 8, 9, and 10, skip 11, 12, and 13, move on to 14. And you do that sequentially because where you're going to get the best score, listen to this, everybody, where you get the best score is with the questions that you know you can get right first. Okay, those are your gimme questions. Those are the in the bank questions, and I want to make sure that every single in the bank question that I know I can tackle, that I get to those first, and that I give my best effort and my best time and the best portion of my mind to those questions. The problem, though, is that what happens is the students get into the later questions and then even the never questions, and I see this a lot, and particularly with advanced students, is this problem pride, I guess you can call it, where they look at a question and say, man, this is hard. Man, but I'm going to, this question will not beat me, and I'm going to stick on this question until I get it right. I'm not going to move on. And guess what happened? The clock is ticking. I'm going to solve this problem. 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes on one problem. where that time spent on a problem that is only going to give you the same number of points as all the other questions, that time could have been better spent on maybe a later question, and especially the now questions, where maybe a question that would have been a now question, but because time is running out, that students have to rush through those questions, and that's where those careless mistakes occur, because maybe they didn't read the question properly, or maybe they didn't do the right calculation, or they didn't think through the proper conclusion, not because they couldn't have, but because they wasted too much time on the questions that they should have punted on until later. And so what I tell my students is this: I say, on those questions that are later or never questions, do you get a double bonus for getting that question right? And they say, well, no. I said, well, then why are you spending so much time on it? Yeah, I know, because we like to be right, but sometimes we have to let go and move on. Another illustration I give is this. I say, okay, imagine you're in a room and there's $20 bills stacked on the table. And anyone who's had me as a coach before, you'll be familiar with this story. And you have $20 bills on your living room, on the table, on the floor, in the kitchen, all throughout the house, and then it goes out into the street that you live on, it goes up the street, then it goes out onto the highway, and putting $20 bills in regulated distances all the way out to the highway. And I say, okay, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes to get as many $20 bills as possible. What is your strategy? Where are you gonna start first? And they say, I'm going to start with the money that's right in front of me. I said, exactly. I said, why? Because it's easy grabbing, and I can get the most of it right there. Mm-hmm. I said, you wouldn't bypass the $20 bills in your home and on the street to go all the way out to the highway just to say, I grabbed one $20 bill out on the highway just to prove that you could, when somebody else is going to spend more time getting the money that is there. And so the point is, you always start with the now questions, always, always, always. Then you get to the later questions, the intermediate ones, after you have taken the time to do all the now questions. And then if there's time left, the never questions. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but the never questions are not that you literally don't do anything with them, but you're not going to spend your precious time and your energy on those questions.
Now, regarding all tests, what are some other ways students make silly mistakes?
Okay, so if you are a student, I love you. If you are a parent, I love you as you love your child. Okay, one of them is simply, what is the question asking? Sometimes because of haste, a student will think they're answering the question and they're not. I remember when I taught 4th grade and we had to do writing, and we had a writing prompt, and they would write this beautiful essay. I mean, it was well written. it was great. Listen, all you writers out there, it was a beautiful essay. It was proper grammar, spelling, punctuation, great story.
That's a shame.
And then they say, here, Mr. Bailey. And then I say, okay. I say, what was the writing prompt about? And it will say, describe a time when you blah, 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 blah. I say, okay, look at your essay. Did you answer the prompt? And then they would go, no. And I said, okay. I said, it's great. It's a great essay, but you didn't answer the question. So you have to make sure you understand what the question is. And another one I always do with kids is they'll say to me, they'll come to me and say, Mr. Bailey, did I do this right? And I say, okay, so what did the directions tell you to do? And I do this little silly example here, but they'll say, it said to circle the rabbits. Okay, great. Circle the rabbits. Did you circle the rabbits? Well, no. Okay, so then what do you think you need to do? Circle the rabbits.
Circle the rabbits.
Right. So my point to people is, make sure your child reads the directions.
Make sure you circle the rabbits.
Circle those rabbits. If that's a point, because if you can remember this, just put circle the rabbits. Is a big one. Another one is this, and this happens a lot in math, is will come up to me and say, Mr. Bailey, I did the calculations and I know I did them right. But I can't find the answer in the multiple choices. So I say, okay, so if your math doesn't match the 4 answer choices or 5 answer choices that are there, what does that probably mean? It probably means my answer is incorrect. I say, exactly. So guess what you have to do? You have to go back and redo the problem. But I know it's right. No. Go back and do it again. Then they go back with a scratched head, and they come back. Oh, okay, here it is right here. Another one that happens a lot is that students rush. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. I'll give a test, or there'll be a test, and this happens every year with state testing. Now, we're not allowed to look at the questions per se, but we know. I've been doing this for a long time. If anyone's been a teacher for any significant amount of time, you know roughly how long it should take to take the test. And we'll start the test. We go through all the protocols we have to do. The text says we have to do. Ready, set, go. They go. 45 minutes later. Now remember, in Texas, it's a 4-hour test. 4-hour test. 45 minutes later, I'm done. Now, some of my babies, because I know them and I know that they're whiz kids, I'm sure that they got it. But many times it's that's not the case. And they just want to get done with it. They want to be done. And so I look at them crazy-eyed, say, because we can't really say anything to them, but I just look at them and I'm looking at them with this face like, are you sure you're done? You're like, okay. And then we get the test score back, and of course it's not anywhere near what will reflect their potential as well. In math, because that's where I spend most of my time, in the classroom at least, it's just careless mistakes on calculations. Or not doing any calculations at all. Mm-hmm. Where they all the time, and if this is your child, if this is you, I'm talking to you. I say, so how'd you get that answer? Mr. Bailey, I do mental math. in my head. I say, well, I can't grade your head. And I can't figure out where your mistakes are to help you.
I can't grade your head.
And so you got to show me some work. When they hate it, when they hate me, because I'm making sure they work all the time. Or if it's a positive sign, it should be a negative sign. Or it's supposed to subtract and instead they added. It's just the careless things. Or because they didn't read the question carefully. If it says, it increased by, there are particular key words that students need to know in word problems sometimes. And if they don't read the question properly, if it's supposed to subtract and they add, or it's supposed to multiply and they divide it, that's going to get you the wrong answer as well. And so those are some of the biggest challenges that I've seen a lot of, haste, lack of reading, and lack of just going through and doing everything, all the steps that need to be done to get to success.
Right. All right. So those were strategies for all tests. Now I want to focus on the different types of tests that our students may be encountering. Mm-hmm. So first, what are strategies for taking multiple choice tests?
Okay, so I'll start with the ones that most people have heard, and you probably have heard over the years. When you're doing a multiple choice test, to make sure that you're eliminating questions and answers that are obviously wrong. Okay, some of them stand out like a sore thumb, and there's no possible way that this is the answer. Okay, then you narrow it down to the ones that are left. Okay. Between those, you have to look at and this is where reading the questions is so important. You have to look at the nuance of what the question is asking. Because sometimes when you have two questions that could possibly both be right, it's the difference between what is a good answer and which is the best answer. Mm-hmm. And so you have to look at what are they asking me for, and which one is going to better get me to what they're asking for. Sometimes they'll give an answer based upon words that were a part. Let's say it's a reading passage, and it's a word that was in the story, and it was a legitimate word, and it proved a legitimate point, but it wasn't directed towards the question that's asked to you. So what happens is many times students, they see things that are familiar to them, and out of familiarity, oh, I remember
That word was there.
Right, that was there. So let me pick letter C.
Right.
And it's like, but is that what the question was asking? I know we saw it, or it could be even a fact in the story. Sometimes, like, let's say it's which is the best, whatever, and let's say that this was a statement of fact, but that statement of fact may not align with the question. So you have to always go back and say, what is the question? What is it asking me? And which one does it best apply to? In math, when you're looking at math questions, test takers, this is what they do for a living. They are professional test takers, and they know the common errors that students make.
You mean test makers?
I'm sorry, did I say test takers?
You did.
Okay, test makers.
Okay.
Yes, test makers. I'm sorry. So, well, for test makers, they know what mistakes will be made. So, if it's a positive answer, it should be a negative answer. They're going to give you both answer choices, because they know some people are they're going to make this mistake, and they are going to craft an answer to match your errors. Also, with calculators, students think that calculators are theirs, because in Texas at least you can start using calculators in 8th grade. And I tell my students, look, calculators are a tool but not a crutch, because if you don't know what you're doing, a calculator is not going to help you. If you don't know how to use that calculator, if you don't know what the question is asking you to do,
It's just a paperweight.
right, pretty much. Or because the output is only as good as the input you put into it. So let's say, for example, I'm in my world, if you remember people, a slope can either go up or down, right? If the equation has a negative slope in it, but you put in a positive sign into the equation that you're trying to put into the calculator, it's not going to help you, because you're putting it in wrong because you don't understand the concept. So don't be too heavily dependent on calculators as well. And so sometimes it's a nuance of, like I said, which one's better, best. Where are they trying to trick you? Does the answer align to the question? And are your inputs sufficient to the outputs that you're trying to get? And also forgetting rules. Sometimes just forgetting the rules or principles. If it's in the sciences, or if it's in the mathematical world, where there are hard rules that you need to know. If you don't know the rules, if you don't know the equations, that's going to be a big hiccup as well.
Yeah, and I know sometimes test makers use words kind of to throw you off, and you already mentioned, they may grab a relevant word from a story, but they might also say, which of the following is not? You need to pay attention to that word, because if you don't, you're going to do the complete opposite of what the actual answer is.
Yes. And a lot of times, at least now, well, I'm not sure if they did when we were kids, but they'll put in big letters which one of these is not the answer. And then the first one that students comes across that is the answer, they'll pick it, because sometimes we can kind of brush over words. And that little nuance in looking at what the question is asking is the difference between right and wrong. Right. If it says not and you put what is, then it's wrong. If you put what's not and they're asking you what is, then that could be a big challenge as well.
So how do we tackle multiple choice questions, like with those that have like all of the above or none of the above? Is there something we should know about that?
Well, it's two things. Sometimes they can be true, and that all the above is relevant, but sometimes it's not. Because what I call those the escape hatch questions. Those are questions that, or another one that they'll put in there is, like for example in math, it cannot be determined from the information given. I call those trap answers, because I hate to say it, but a lot of times students just don't want to think. And so it's easier just to say, yep, there's all of them, or nope, it's none of them. Now, it's not to say that it can't be all or it can't be none, But many times, because students don't want to take the time to actually dig into the answer choices to look at the nuances, they won't do it. Or in math, I keep going back to math because that's my world a lot. But if it says it cannot be determined from the information given, that's a I can't figure it out, or I don't want to figure it out escape hatch. Say, well, I guess I can't figure it out, so I guess there's no answer there. Or, I don't even know what they're talking about, so clearly it cannot be determined, which is a trap. Another trap is, like in math, if you see, and here goes a subtle one. Watch this, listen everybody. If you see a number in the question, it 9 times out of 10 will not be the answer choice. Let's say the problem has 5 in it, and one of the answer choices is 5, don't pick it. 9 times out of 10. That will not be, it's a trick, because again, the mind is familiar with things, and we see things in our head, and the student will say, oh, yeah, I remember reading 5 in the question. Oh, there's 5 down there. Yep, there it is right there. Nope, it's a trap. So do not be sucked into the trap. Let me ask one more point I forgot to make about the multiple choice is this. Suppose you get down to 2 answers, and time is ticking, and your child is just stumped, or student, you're just stumped, and you just don't know. Like, you legitimately don't know. You turned over every leaf, and you've tried everything to get to the answer, and you just don't know. You know what you do? Now I'm going to mess some people up here. Choose.
Guess.
I'm going to tell you real certain now. I'm not saying this to encourage it, and I'm not encouraging parents and students. I'm not encouraging this. I'm not. Let me say real quick. So, yeah, just pick one. Because if you don't know, then you have a 50-50 shot. If you narrow down the ones you know are wrong, and you're down to 2, and you just don't know, and staring at it for another minute or 2 won't help you to get to the answer, then just pick one. I remember a kid in middle school. I went to middle school with him, and he went through a test, and he said after the test, he said, I went through the test, and I put down abacadabra for the whole test, and I got a C. And he was pretty proud of that. Don't do that. But my point is, he put abacadabra and got a C out of the test. But my point is that sometimes you just have to pick. Now, that's after you've eliminated everything you need to do, but make sure that you have done all you can efficiently and quickly, and then move on.
Okay. Strategies for open response questions.
Now, open response. 1, I'm going to keep going back to make sure you're answering the question. I keep going back to that because you can give great answers to questions that were never, ever, ever asked. So 1, make sure you're reading the questions. 2, listen. Take some time to think through what you're going to say before you say it. Don't just read it and dive right on in. I mean, unless it's just so obvious and you're so well versed in it, take a second to think through your thoughts. I'd even dare say, and this is one thing I was always battling, it's a battle with students, is to take a second to write 30 seconds to write an outline of what you're going to discuss. You're gonna write about point A, point B, and point C, and you don't have to write out full sentences, but just some trigger words so you have a plan and a path to get to the end of the open response, and you're answering it in a way that answers the questions. Also, make sure you're providing supporting details. Details, and details. I can always tell when a student is pulling an answer out of their butt, or if they have really thought through. Sorry, y'all, I said butt. But they have really thought through what they're saying, and it's obvious. You can tell when people are just trying to dance around questions and not really get to the point because they don't know what they're talking about. Versus the ones that are versed. But also just say this as well, and we'll talk about this more later. But also, make sure your child and students, make sure you study. Say it with me. Study. What do you mean study? No, study. Like, prepare for the exams.
Now that's a whole nother episode.
Oh yeah, we'll have to do a whole that can be
on how to study.
On how to study. But we'll just say for right now, sufficiently to say that you have to prepare for your test. You can't just fall out of heaven and then sit down and take a test. You might be able to do it now. Well, my baby gets all A's, great. Or I'm a straight A's, great. But mark my words, a day will come when that will not happen. That's when clients start coming to Noggin Educational Coaching. My baby was a straight A student, and now they're not. Why? Well, how much time have they spent studying? Well, none. I'm like, well, there you go. And so I want to encourage you, if you don't study, to study and prepare. That's probably the best way, is to know what you're talking about, not just hope that you know because you sat in class. And that's insufficient.
You sat in class.
Yes.
That seems so simplistic for you to say prepare for the test. That's the best way to take a test, is to be prepared. But
yes.
Unfortunately, it's not a given for some students,
Yes.
as we have come to find out during virtual learning.
Right. I'll say that I've had to humble many a student, because they came into my class thinking that because they got A's in the past, that they're going to get A's in my class, just because they got A's before. And then I've had upset parents. I've had upset students. Well, what do you mean I got to B? What do you mean I got a C? Well, how do I get this? Well, you took the test, I graded it, and this is the result that came out as a result of it. And so the best way to boost it up, I remember one student, I encouraged him to study, and then his grades started to go up. Mr. Bailey, I started to study, and my grades went up. And I'm thinking, I said, go figure.
Eureka!
Wow, really? And he was he's so excited about it, as well. And so I can't say, again, we'll have to do a whole episode on that later. But
Coming in April.
Okay, there we go. Really?
I just decided it right now.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, typically when I give her an idea, the show won't come to fruition for about another year. But hey, this is 1 month. Listen to past episodes where I said, "Did I bring this about a year ago?" It happens all the time. Anyway, so but like studying, and there is an art to studying as well. But we don't have time to hit that today. But just to say, make sure your child studies. That will help tremendously, especially with open response, where you actually have to generate something versus just bubble in a letter.
All right, so these seem to be, or in theory, these are the easier questions. True, false questions, because, you have a 50-50 chance, but are there strategies for also tackling true, false questions?
Yes. One is, because now you're going in the generalities, right? You're going in the this is all cats meow, okay? Or all dogs bark, or whatever it is. The statement is, it's either completely true or it's completely, or if there's one. Here's the thing: something is false if one little component of the statement is not true, or it could be true most of the time, but if there are some exceptions to that truth, you have to think, are there any other scenarios that could make this statement false? Okay, or is there a nuance to this statement you think it's false that could make it true? Mm-hmm. So you have to look at all the different angles of the question, of the statement, and then from there, you have to make a decision. Is it always, here's the key, is it a timeless, constant truth in all circumstances, in all situations, under all scenarios, within that particular question or topic on that particular thing, or is there a loophole out of it? And if so, you have to think about it, because if you don't, because again, here we go, if they know some students are not going to read the question carefully,
right,
and they're just going to gloss over it, and they see something that is not, that could be that loophole out, but because students are going to, okay, true, bam, and they move on. And that's where they can be tripped up. And sometimes those true false questions are going to be some of the hardest ones, because sometimes you have to really, really think and process. And so, again, it's about reading, processing. Is it a timeless truth in all circumstances at all times, or is there a loophole out? And is there one little word in the sentence or two that could deviate from the question that they think that most students would answer? And that's where the I gotcha is, and that's how they'll trip you up.
I read that the words all, only, never, and always are almost always false.
A lot of times that is the case. Yeah, because again, those big generalities, those big swooping categories, and it's rare that when you see those. I mean, not that it doesn't happen, but a lot of times that's just not true.
Right. So you, even though you are a mathematician and a lover of math, you are also a really good writer.
I am.
You
Thank
are.
You. Thank you, sweetheart.
So, the not SAT, the STAR test here in Texas has added back in the essay because I think they took it out for a little bit. And so this year they're having to write essays with prompts. And you've talked a little bit about that. And you also, in the open answer question that I posed to you, answered this a little bit. But give us some tips other than creating an outline, because you said that can help make... particularly, I'm thinking about our son, our junior high, 7th grade son.
Lord have mercy. In
making or writing a good essay from a prompt. What are some things to help them to do that?
Okay, so what I'm going to share, I've used this formula from when I got taught it. I was in a summer program in high school up through getting my master's degree, and I used the same formula, and it worked all the time. Ready? Here we go. Write this down. 1, make sure you have a clear thesis statement.
Check.
Clear thesis statement. What is this? Why am I going to take the time to read this paper? What are you going to prove to me? Okay. Secondly, make sure that you have for each paragraph there is a clear topic sentence that this is what this paragraph is going to discuss. And then everything underneath that topic sentence provides supporting details to defend that topic. Okay, so everything has to tie in back into the topic sentence, and the topic sentence ties back into the thesis. So let's say you're writing a 3-point essay, and the reason that blah blahs do blah blahs because of blah blah. Okay, great. Point 1, and also, or how can we say this? As we said, this is a simple way. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them, and then retell them what you told them. Let me say it again. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them, and then retell them what you told them, what you told them. So intro, thesis statement, and I'm going to prove A, B, and C. So I know I'm going to be looking for these 2-3 things, whatever you're going to discuss. Then paragraph 1 goes back to the first point in the intro paragraph. This is the blah blah blah. Okay, great. And then you provide supporting details, different quotations, different statistics, different. Everything drives back to that topic sentence. If it doesn't tie back into the topic sentence, leave it out. Okay, and then good transition words as well. Transitioning into the next sentence, into the next paragraph. Then the same thing, topic sentence, and then supporting details. Everything must support paragraph, and the paragraph must support the thesis statement. Okay, and then the details of the conclusion as you wrap up. In conclusion, because of A, B, and C, we prove the thesis statement, and then wrap it up. Okay, that's in general. Again, using words that are going to elevate the story. Let's say it's a narrative. Let's say you have to writing a story tell us about a time when something happened. I told my students I want to be able to literally close my eyes and experience the story. Like, I want to smell the smells. I want to see the sights. I want to feel the feels. I want to feel physically and feel emotionally. I want to feel like I'm literally right there with you. When you're writing a good paper, a good narrative, if the audience feels like they're right there with you because they can experience it with you, then that is great. I never allow them to use simple words. I want them to develop their vocabulary and to expand their thought and expand how they were to explain what was going on with it. So whenever you can provide those details, also just basic, basic grammar, spelling, punctuation, all those basic things, just the rules of writing are critical as well, because that shows how well you can just clearly, a subject, a predicate, verb, adverb, all those things, prepositions, articles, all the things that we learned in grammar are critical as well. And also getting there in a concise way and a precise way as well.
One of the things I've been teaching DJ, our 7th grader, as we've been doing virtual learning with him, is that I want to be able to make a movie out of the story that I'm reading. So like if I need to like storyboard his essay, I need to be able to make a movie out of it. So it needs to be that descriptive that I can look at this and not have experienced this or heard about this topic before and be able to write a script for a movie out of it.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, rereading it, I find that our child does not go back over it, and then I'll read it out loud to him, and he'll go, "Oh, yeah, that doesn't make sense."
Yeah.
Or I skip some major stuff.
Yes. If you can, now sometimes you can't, out loud in a test per se, read it out loud, but if you can read it mentally or even maybe whisper it, I'll have students read through stuff. Okay, stop. What did you read? And they'll be like, that makes absolutely no sense. I'm like, exactly. Or they think that they read something, or what they thought they said in their head, they put on paper and they didn't. Like, let's say the cat jumped over the moon, and they really wrote the cat jumped under the moon. I'm making a simple point here, but that what the intentions of what maybe we hear in our head may not match what's being written on the paper as well. And so it's important to make sure that when something is written, that it is clear and that it matches what you're really trying to convey as well.
One of the things I was concerned about was, if you have a student that's not necessarily that well read, they're going to get writing prompts and they're not going to be able to Google or look up any quotes or look up any information about something. So how do you prepare to provide evidence to support your thesis if you are basically having to pull everything from your own experience in your own brain?
I love y'all. I love y'all so much. I do. Reading is fundamental. Read like a book, an actual textbook, an actual novel, being learned. I'm saying this in poor grammar on purpose, but being learned. The more you have to pull from, the more you have to pull. And let me preface this by saying this: research-based knowledge. That could be a whole nother episode as well on. I don't care how you feel about it. What's the evidence to support it? And if it's asking for your personal opinion on something, that's one thing. Like, what do you think and why? Okay, but even then, it needs to come from evidence. Okay, but you have to. How can I say this? The more you pull from in your experiences, and this is for adults too, honestly. The more you pull from, the more you read and explore, studying, these social sciences, looking at research, looking at psychology or economics or history, or the rules of science and math, looking at what's happened in the past, looking at current research. I'm not saying you got to be a hardcore academic per se, but watching a bunch of YouTube videos is not per se going to get your child what they need. Or here we go. I don't even put this on the question or not, but the languages, like how you talk, like you cannot, or how you write. You cannot write the way you text. You cannot write the way you post.
Amen to that.
Because they're short, they're supposed to be short, and then there's all these grammatical shortcuts that people take in their thing. But when you're doing academic work, you have to have a base of vocabulary. You have to have a base of knowledge to come from not just based on somebody out there who, because I've had people say this before. Well, how do you know that's true? Well, because it was on the internet. Well, just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true. And so you have to pull and be able to look at contrasting arguments. And well, so what I'm trying to say is we have to beef up our child's knowledge of things, and not just from what they think. Because otherwise, they will be literally just pulling it out of their butt. And we don't want them to write essays out of their butt. We want them to write it based on knowledge and based upon facts.
Right. I completely agree. And then the other thing is there is a website called, you'll have to correct me if you know what this is, the News ELA or Newslia? Newslia. Okay, yes. And it writes, it provides essays and information, news articles about current events, and you can actually change the number of words in an article based on the age of the student so that it's more accessible to them. But it's interesting, very interesting current events that kids can get a hold of, and maybe just reading one of those every day would give them a good base of knowledge to have something to pull from. Because between now and the state testing, they may not have enough time to read a bunch of books.
They don't have time to read a bunch of books.
They don't have time to read a bunch of books. So just having the opportunity to read something that's going to be accessible to their age group might give them just a base of information that they can use on test essays or essays on tests.
Yes. I would also say like things like Khan Academy, where like things that are short, sweet, to the point, that gives you facts that you need in a quick way. I don't even know if it's even still a thing. Do people still use Cliff Notes? Cliff's Notes? Is that still a thing?
It's probably digital somehow, but
okay, well,
who knows?
If you can get to, let's say you don't have time to read a whole novel, but if you can get somebody to give you a summary of it, that can help you to get just a general idea of what's happening in the story, that helps as well. I would also caution to say that be careful of your sources, because the goal is to get objective, research-based facts, and not just research, but research that is well-rounded and has tackled the hypothesis and the contra questions that come with it as well. So if someone says this, but is there any research out there that disputes it, and why? So just because somebody has said it, and just because somebody can quote a fact, doesn't necessarily mean that it is all conclusive, or because they can use statistics. And that's a whole other thing about how people twist and distort statistics to support their arguments when they're using the math wrong. As well. And so we have to help our kids to learn how to think critically, which is going to help them overall, which is going to boost them up as a stronger overall student academically as well. And so I just want to say that, one, look at the source, and look at your own bias. Maybe what you're reading or what you're looking at is tilting and bending towards your own particular biases. Are there other opposing views out there? Is there things that may go against maybe what they thought to be true or what you thought to be true, and to look at what else is going out there in the world as well, so we can have a balanced approach and a truly academic approach to attacking our content.
You're reminding me of all these upcoming episodes. We are going to have an episode coming up about critical thinking, and you just gave me an idea for an episode about fake news.
Ooh, yes.
Checking your sources and making sure that they are accurate and reputable sources. I think that's something that not only kids need today, but many, many adults.
Yes.
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 Okay, a couple more questions about this.
Any questions on Facebook or anything?
Oh, yeah, there was one. She wants to know if these are test-taking strategies can be used in high school and college. Is this stuff that younger kids like kindergarten all the way up to a senior in college can be using?
Yes. The like, for example, some of the things I'm talking about, it's the level of depth and complexity just changes as students go on. For example, I learned how to write a really good solid essay in high school. I don't know how I got that far. I didn't know how to write a good essay, but when I finally did, I used it all the way through my master's degree, and I never changed the formula, and I was always crushing it on my papers. Now, the level of complexity changed from a high school level essay to a master's degree level essay, but the approach was the same. Learning how to do calculations and follow a process. Now, whether you're in first grade or whether you're in high school, middle school, college, or whatever, there's a way to do things, and learning how to do those things is important. How to dig into pulling up facts or as we call like annotating your answers and getting justifying your answers. If it's a multiple choice question, where in the story or where in the essay or where in the novel did you get this from? That's applicable all throughout the grade levels, even if you're taking a test to get into a graduate school program as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of where you are in the journey, and then you have to cater it down. You don't want your first grader to be looking at hardcore.
Give me your textual evidence.
Right. You have to adjust it to where they are, but the strategies are relevant no matter where you are. You just have to cater it to their appropriate grade levels.
Oh, that's so good. One last question. So you have ADHD, ADD.
I sure do.
Right. So
what'd you just say? No, no, guys, wait, hold on, wait.
Joke.
Pause. That laugh was not for what I just did, but about our marriage. That was a layered laugh.
It was not layered.
Well, okay, when we first got married, you'd say go out to the store and buy A, B, and C, and I come back with D, E, and F.
Or A and D.
Right, and forget C altogether. So
yes.
Anyway.
No, that was legit a funny joke.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because I almost fell for it.
Oh.
The reason why I'm asking is because there are many students that are just like you. So what do you recommend for kids that tend to lose concentration when testing?
Okay. One is that you have to make sure that you know why you're there. Okay. It's a simple question, but I'm here to take this test. Okay. And I wanted to truly reflect what I know. And so you have to quiet the noise around you. Okay. And this is for people who, whether you have ADD or not, ADHD or not, this helps. Okay. So just quiet the noise around you. Take a calm, deep breath. Relax. If you're coming all wired up, that's not going to help you as well, because your mind's racing, your heart's racing, everything. So just take slow, deep breaths, relax, go into the test. Another thing is this: that you can cheat on a test without cheating on a test. Here's what I mean by that. I tell my kids to make your own cheat sheet.
What do you mean?
What I mean is this: when a test begins, listen, everybody. Now, again, this is assuming you have done the preparation in advance. When the test begins, dump out everything you know about that subject, about the rule, about the fact, about the date, about the calculation, about the formula. Everything you know, take a minute or two when you can. You can't do it for all tests, of course, but whenever you can, write it on the sheet. Now, here's the key. After they say you may begin. So
not with your book open before it starts.
Exactly. But
that's a great idea.
To dump your brain, so you're not having to pull it back out of a memory bank when you're taking the test. If you know you have a formula, or you have this fact or date you have to know, or this main thing that your teacher said, write it down. They can't tell you that you can't write that stuff down before the test begins. Because
you can't before, you mean after.
Well, yeah, after, right. Because it's coming from, see, that's ADD coming. See, because it's coming from your own head. They can't penalize you for it coming from your head after the test has begun.
That's mind-blowing.
So if you know it, write it down.
Good.
Yeah, just write it down as well. So now, what's up? I already wrote it up here. Okay, you pull it down to where you need, and then use it to go through the test as well. Again, and because, okay, here we go, and my wife can attest to this, people with ADD have struggles with managing time. Time management is a big issue with us. So you have to go for what you know first. Again, going back to the three-tiered cake, you go through the now questions first, so that you don't want to leave money on the table. or leave fruit hanging on the tree per se. Then go to those later questions and narrow. Otherwise, because of what we have, it's called hyper focus. That's where we just can't let stuff go. And I've done it on stuff that I had no business doing that on.
This was a marriage laugh that I'm doing right now.
Hey, why am I laughing anymore? But hyper focus means I'm gonna figure this out. Sometimes it's a good thing at the right time, but sometimes it can be to our detriment. And so sometimes you just gotta, I call it Elsa, let it go. You have to Elsa it, or pause on it and move on, because otherwise you're going to spend too much time on some questions and leave points on the table that you could have really, done really well on later on, but you didn't because you're spending too much time on one question. And so remember this word, everybody, Elsa. Let it go. Move on, and when you can, come back to it.
All right, you know what else we're going to have to let go? This episode.
I feel like this is just, we're going to take a commercial break and come back for part 2. I'm so loaded. I'm so loaded.
Yes, this has been very good information. We are out of time, though.
Okay, fine.
Unfortunately. But thank you so much for joining me, my husband, and my co-host, David Bailey. This has been very impressive, actually.
Well, thank
you. Never cease to impress me. You are a really excellent educator.
Thank you, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, maybe at some point in April, like you promised, we'll come back and do one on studying.
Yeah, we will, actually.
Yes.
And for
hold,
those
hold
of
her
you,
to it, people. Hold my wife to this.
Right.
Not April of 2022. April of 2020.
Sure. Send me an email at info@schooldayshow.com.
And if you want to find out more about these strategies in detail and specifically to whatever your needs are, you can email me at david@noggineducation.com. NOGGIN education.com. We can discuss, what your specific needs are and then how to craft a plan and how to get you there.
Yeah, super quick. Talk about what you do with Noggin Educational Coaching.
Yes. So we have, actually, this was the original branch of Noggin, we helped identify every child does not learn the same way. Okay, and that's called differentiated learning. And so what we do is we custom craft plans on how to attack studying, how to attack schoolwork based upon how your child uniquely learns. So we go through some inventories and questionnaires to kind of figure out what your child's learning DNA is. Then we create a plan of attack on how to address all the academic areas that you would like to attack. We also do test prep, so SAT, ACT, or if you're getting into private schools, the IC exam as well, or state testing, no matter what the state is. And because we're virtual, we can coach anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to anywhere in Texas to anywhere across the country and anywhere around the world. If you're listening in different countries as well, we can help as well. And so if you want to find out more about what we do, you can go to my website, which is noggineducation.com. That's NOGGIN education.com.
All right. Well, thank you again. This is very, very helpful information.
You're welcome.
So, Noggin Educational Foundation, not coaching, is the premier sponsor of School Days. So we always want to let you guys know what's happening with Noggin. So we are currently taking applications for 2 of our programs. Noggin offers 12 hours of free private tutoring to students through our educational coaching program. Also, through our ARD advocacy program, parents receive support in securing services and accommodations for their students and that have learning disabilities or special needs. With the closure of schools and distance learning, the education gap for low-income students has widened, and the one-on-one intervention we provide is vital. So see our website, nogginfoundation.org, or email me at danita@nogginfoundation.org. My name is spelled DONEDA for more details. And don't miss our show in 2 weeks on March 23rd. David and I will sit down with Jennifer Folkenroth, who is the National Senior Director of...
That's in 1 week.
That's in 1 week?
Today's the 16th, yes.
It's next week?
23rd is next week, yes. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, that's all right.
Well, I better get ready.
Get busy. Like, hey, where's the show this week? Oh, my bad. Okay, sorry. It's okay. Okay, I'm back. I'm done.
I would have figured it out eventually. So don't miss our show.
You can mute me now. You can mute.
I can mute you
Yes.
again? Okay. Don't miss our show in 2 weeks on March 23rd. David and I will
Turn me up. You just said it again, babe.
I did. Thank God nobody's watching, and I'm certainly going to cut this out of the podcast. Okay. I just keep reading. Okay. Don't miss our show in 1 week on March 23rd. David and I will sit down with Jennifer Folkenroth, National Senior Director of Tobacco Programs for the American Lung Association, and Dr. Matthew Gibbons, who's the Chief Executive Director of Student Services for Richardson Independent School District in North Texas. And they'll talk to us about youth vaping. Did you know that more than 3.6 million U.S. youth vape? And this is causing the Surgeon General to declare youth a vaping epidemic. We will discuss the problem with schools that they are facing and how districts are mobilizing to address the issue with their students. So don't forget to tell your parent friends about that one. And as always, head to our website, schooldazedshow.com, for more information about all that we're doing and the resources mentioned on School Dazed. And remember, you don't ever have to miss a show. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Audible, and pretty much anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Noggin Foundation. That's Noggin. And last but not least, David and I always want to end the show by saying that we are parenting by grace. We depend on God to give us the strength and wisdom that we need to help our kids grow into flourishing adults. And if you would like to know more about that, please feel free to email me at info@schooldazedshow.com. Have a great week and stay safe.